What the system also tells us is that the powerful want to deny this system, right? Because if they control Earth, the fake world, they want to make it as real as possible. Does that make sense? That's the source of their power. The belief that the only thing that matters is the material world, the prison that we live in. And that's why we have science, right? Science is negation of the spiritual world and the validation of the material world. If you cannot see it, it must be fake, right? Okay.
47,000 millones de dólares invirtió el Instituto Nacional de Salud estadounidense en 2025 financiando proyectos que reducen tu conciencia a mera química y cables. Eso es lo que financia ese mundo falso, que denuncia al autor un paradigma materialista diseñado para sostener la maquinaria industrial. Y esa visión mecánica impacta directo en tu bolsillo cuando pagas miles de dólares anuales en antidepresivos o terapias que solo medican el síntoma físico. A continuación, el profesor Jiang expone la red filosófica que atrapa tu percepción diaria, revelando por qué a las élites les aterra que descubras el verdadero origen de tus ideas.
We'll go more into them this semester, but I'm going to introduce them, okay? So Kant. Remember from the first class, Kant had a theory of how the world works. There is no objective reality that we see, okay? So before, the assumption was that we just absorb reality, okay? But Kant says that we are active. Sorry, we'll wait for this. So Kant says that we are active participants in reality. How? Well, because our brains are filters. We add space and time to reality. Space and time does not exist outside of us, okay? So the objective reality is called noumena, okay? The things in themselves. Do not worry about these names, but this is the objective reality. What happens is that for our filters, we interact with the noumena, and that creates something called the phenomena. The things that we see, the phenomena, okay? And that's the world we know. The noumena we can never ever know. That's the theory of Kant, okay? And this has been confirmed by neuroscience. So this is basically the most accurate model of the world that we have. The problem, though, is that Kant's conception of the world creates three questions, okay? The first question is, what is the noumena? Kant says we can never know it, but we still want to know it, okay? That's the first question. Second question then is, who gave us these filters, right? Where do our filters come from? How do our minds work, and who created our minds in the first place? That's the second question. The third question is, if we are all seeing the world for our own lens, how do we know that we're seeing the same world? How do our perception of the world align together? Okay? So Kant creates these problems. Hegel, who comes after Kant, Friedrich Hegel, by the way, he proposes a solution to these three problems. And what he says is this, and this is really important for us to understand, is the noumena is the Geist. The Geist is hard to translate. We usually translate it to mean spirit. Okay, so what Hegel is saying is that the spirit world is what creates the material world. We are just a shell. What really matters is the spirit world. Now, it's really important to understand the concept of the Geist, okay? And again, it's German, but there's no actual English translation for it. So it's best to see Geist as a combination of three words that derive from Geist. Okay, these three words are ghost, geyser, and gist. Okay? So these three English words are derivatives of the German word Geist. Right? Most words in English are actually German in origin. Sorry, not most words, but many words, okay? All right, ghost is just a parallel reality that exists alongside us, right? A spiritual world. That's the first concept. Geyser is just a force that is exploding or becoming or expanding. So this Geist is constantly expanding and becoming. Gist means the essence of things, the core of things. Okay? So the real truth in the world is the Geist. Not what we see, but what is invisible to us. Okay, so that's the idea of the Geist. Does that make sense? Now with the Geist, we can answer all three questions. The nomina, the real world, is the spiritual world, not the material world. It's the Geist that gives us these filters. And because we're all seeing the world through the Geist, we see the same world. Okay?
Esa matriz compartida que describe el profesor no es simple literatura del siglo XIX. En 1983, la inteligencia militar estadounidense redactó el informe Gateway, desclasificado recién en 2003, donde el teniente coronel Wayne McDonnell detallaba cómo el cerebro humano interactúa literalmente con un universo holográfico. El Pentágono gastó millones investigando en secreto, lo mismo que estos filósofos teorizaron, confirmando que nuestra percepción es solo un instrumento de sintonía fina. Y lo que viene a continuación te revela las capas de esa simulación, detallando exactamente cómo funciona la arquitectura cósmica que te rodea a diario.
So this comes from Plato and a religion called Gnosticism. Okay, the Gnostics. Gnostic just means knowledge. Okay, so in the beginning, the Big Bang, the force is the monad, or the one. Okay, there are different names for this thing, or nous. Just think of this as a supreme God. Okay, the Big Bang, the force, like the sun almost. Okay, the spiritual sun of the universe. The nous works by breathing. When he breathes, he vibrates his divine power. And through this, he creates new beings called dyads. Dyads are just pairs of forces. Okay? And these dyads then create different realities. All right? So different realities are being created through this interaction. And eventually, you reach Earth. Okay? So, in other words, what Plato and the Gnostics are telling us is that the Geist is a multi-layer, multi-dimensional world that we access all the time. Okay? Does that make sense? And the Earth, what we see, it is just the most outer shell in this universe. Is this clear to you guys? All right. So now the question then is, what is the purpose of life in the world? And what Plato says is that the purpose of life in this world is to return to the monad. Okay, and guess what, guys? This is actually the framework for a lot of religions, including Hinduism, right, and Buddhism. This is what the Hindus and the Buddhists believe as well. Nirvana is to return to the monad. I'm not sure if you guys have studied religion before, okay? But that's the idea. So what Plato says is that through the pursuit of knowledge, philosophy, the love of knowledge, you can return to the monad. Okay? Dante, and we will study Dante in depth later on, okay? But Dante has another solution. What Dante says is that the monad is love. Okay? And the monad, because he creates things, his divine spark emanates throughout the universe. Okay? So there is a divine spark in us. And this divine spark is called love. So we are able to love people. Mothers love children. You love each other because of this divine spark in you. And the more you love, the more you return to the monad. Okay, so Plato says, pursue knowledge. Dante says, pursue love.
Esa desconexión espiritual tiene un modelo de negocios extremadamente rentable. Google y Meta facturaron combinados más de $300 mil millones en 2024, optimizando algoritmos diseñados específicamente para fragmentar tu atención y aislarte emocionalmente frente a una pantalla. La tecnología moderna no busca tu conocimiento ni tu conexión empática, sino retener tus ojos para vender publicidad por fracciones de centavo. Pero esa epidemia de soledad tecnológica es solo el síntoma de una fractura mucho más antigua. El próximo clip te explica cómo las cúpulas de poder justifican y administran el dolor a escala global.
Why are people doing all these bad things and not only getting away with it, but they're also controlling the world? That's a big question, right? So, for Plato, the answer is very simple. This world doesn't matter. Who cares if they control this world? It's a fake shadow world. Ignore them. Just focus on the pursuit of knowledge because that allows you to be one with the monad. Okay? Who cares about this world? Give them what they want. Give them their power, their fame, their money. Who cares? Dante's answer is actually very interesting. Okay? That's Plato's answer. It doesn't matter. This world doesn't matter. Who cares what happens in this world? It's a prison anyway. Dante actually proposed something different. He says this. If the monad is love, love is trust. So the monad loves us, and as a result, the monad gives us free will. Now, free will can lead to bad things, for example, this world, but he has no choice in the matter. Because for him to interfere means to take away our free will. And free will is his greatest gift to us. Okay? But now and then, what he will do is he will send messengers to our world to remind us that there is a divine spark in us. And we can activate it and achieve a greater consciousness. And these messengers are Plato, Dante, right? Jesus. Right? Does it make sense? So now and then the monad will send through the Geist, okay? The monad will implant ideas in these people who will then tell us the truth. But it's our choice whether or not to believe it because the monad has given us free will. All right, so for Plato, what's important is the pursuit of knowledge. For Dante, what matters is the pursuit of love. To love each other unconditionally. Okay? And that's what they tell us.
Ese aislamiento intencional prepara el terreno para la verdadera coordinación de las élites. Desde 1872, los líderes financieros y políticos más poderosos de Estados Unidos se reúnen en el campamento Bohemian de California, quemando una efigie frente a un búho gigante, en un ritual llamado cremación de las preocupaciones. No son adolescentes aburridos, son presidentes de corporaciones multimillonarias, invirtiendo tiempo y capital en ceremonias arcaicas para sellar lealtades secretas. Y la jugada que viene a continuación expone el mecanismo psicológico exacto detrás de estas transgresiones, revelando por qué cometer lo inconfesable es el pegamento del poder absoluto.
So that's how power works. Now, transgression works in this model because transgression allows the powerful to align to a certain part of this universe, okay? Because in this universe, there are evil forces as well. Does that make sense? So for example, the metaphor is, think of the internet, right? Well, there are millions and millions of websites. And through transgression, by doing the same evil act, what the powerful have done is they've locked onto the same website, right? And because they've locked on the same website, it allows for synchronicity. It allows for them to commit, to think alike and to behave the same way. Okay? All right, so that's the general theory. And again, this is all speculation. I'm not telling you this is true, but I'm giving you a framework to work with to better understand why things happen.
Esa sintonización oscura que menciona Jiang tiene efectos colaterales masivos en la población civil. Cuando las cúpulas promueven el hipermaterialismo, la crisis existencial resultante se trata como un mero desequilibrio químico, generando un mercado global de antidepresivos que superó los $16 mil millones en 2023. Tu seguro médico prefiere pagar medicación crónica antes que cuestionar el entorno que te enferma. Atento a lo que sigue, porque el autor define, con precisión quirúrgica, en qué consiste realmente ese mal institucional, revelando el objetivo final que persigue la burocracia contemporánea.
The system, okay? So, because the monad is the truth, it's love, right? So the closer you move to the monad, that's what's good. The further you move away from the monad, that's what's evil, right? So at the very end of this model is earth. So the more you embrace the material world, the more you deny the spiritual world, that's what's evil in this model.
Okay.
So for Plato, what's good is the pursuit of knowledge. And what's evil is the pursuit, the denial of knowledge, which includes, by the way, art, right? Movies. Because movies are just a shadow of the shadow world. If the world we live in is fake, and movies, all they do is depict this fake world, then it makes things worse. Okay? And Dante, whatever allows for more love is good. What allows for less love is bad. Okay?
So just to add on to that, so what if, like we mentioned earlier, sacrifice can be considered as a way to unite people. It creates cohesion.
Yeah.
And with cohesion...
It unlocks divine energy because you're accessing a part of this model.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
So,
and that's why, as you're doing this sacrifice, they are worshiping a certain God. Right? So sacrifice is part of their religion. It's not done independently. They have a religious framework for the sacrifice, and that's why they do it. Right? They don't do sacrifice for the personal sacrifice. They do sacrifice as a consummation of their religion, because that's what their religion demands of them. Right? And because so they're worshiping a God, they're sacrificing these people to send to this God.
Okay.
Right? So they're accessing a part of this model, which is a lower part, okay? And there are evil beings in this model as well, right? But they go lower.
Ese descenso a la oscuridad se disfraza cotidianamente de éxito profesional y exigencia académica. Hoy más de 43 millones de estadounidenses cargan con una deuda estudiantil que supera los 1,7 billones de dólares, atando su futuro financiero a un sistema que premia la obediencia corporativa. Te educan para ser un engranaje productivo y temeroso, atrapado en pagos mensuales, que ahogan cualquier vocación genuina. El próximo clip aterriza esta teoría directamente en tu historial escolar y te muestra la trampa invisible, que tus padres aceptaron ciegamente, por miedo a que fracasaras.
Our society is first and foremost anti-love. It does not allow for people to love each other. So for example, school, right? So without school, your parents would just care about your happiness. But because of school, parents care about your grades and whether or not you get into a elite American college and whether or not you get a good job. And so the parents deny your free will. They deny your agency. And as a result, you don't feel loved. Okay? So that's what Dante would argue. Our society is anti-love because the society is constructed in a way that does not allow for normal human relationships to flourish. Right? In a normal relationship, your parents would just let you do whatever you want. I would think, you know? But because they're like, no. If I let you do whatever you want, you will not do well in school, and you won't be able to get a job, and then you become, I don't know, unemployed and a drug addict. Who knows, okay? Right? That's how they think. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the denial of free will is anti-love, and therefore it's evil, and it limits you from getting closer to monad.
That's right.
Ese control, basado en el miedo, requiere una infraestructura masiva de vigilancia. Durante el Foro Económico Mundial de Davos, en enero de 2024, las élites corporativas priorizaron la implementación de inteligencia artificial para monitorear la desinformación ciudadana y anticipar disturbios civiles. Gastan miles de millones en herramientas de predicción social, porque el despertar de la población amenaza directamente sus márgenes de rentabilidad. Y acaban de diseñar el corralito digital perfecto. Ahora, Jiang te explica el motivo fundacional de toda esta arquitectura restrictiva, desnudando la necesidad más primitiva que tienen los arquitectos de esta matriz.
Different people will interpret this model in a different way. Okay? In their conception, the monad's the evil one. Their God's the good one. They're liberating us from the monad by making us more focused on the material world. Okay, does that make sense? But the reality is that they were able to get their power because they had a religion that promoted transgression, which allowed them to coordinate well together. And now that they have this power, they need to rationalize why they have this power, and they need to develop systems to maintain this power. And that's why we have the world we live in today. Does that make sense? Okay? Does that make sense? They're powerful, they want to maintain the power, so they will think of new ideas that allow them to keep this power, even if it means denying the truth, okay? And again, guys, this is a theory. No one knows if this is true or not.